established in January 2007. It was in coordinates with the city manager and our present chair, Tammy Gouveia. So they spoke to each other about trying to address the issues of substance abuse within our community, and so the roundtable was developed along those lines. And through these efforts, the city manager made this one of his initiatives. The roundtable in itself are made up of a core group of people in different sectors of the community. That includes healthcare providers, social service agencies, businesses, educators, law enforcement, city officials, and as well as young people in our community. In July 2007, the Roundtable received its first grant through the State Department of Public Health. With that grant, it's called the Mass Call 2 grant, which is held by the Lowell Health Department. So they're the one who actually implement that grant. And part of that is their approach is secondary prevention, which are interventions with current or previous users at risk for using again. So part of what they do around that subcommittee is to educate clients, which they've done at the Lowell Transitional Living Center in Billerica House of Correction. They also educate healthcare professionals and community members through forums and presentations, and also conduct medication disposal days at the Lowell Health Department, which you hear about in the previous months and things like that. About a year later, in August 2008, the Roundtable came across a different grant, and that was called the Drugs Free Community Support Grant. And we received that. It is a federally funded, and it was sponsored by the Office of National Drug Control Policy and SAMHSA, which is the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Service Administration. This grant is a 5-year grant. It is given to us at $100,000 a year. And during that time, we were able to hire staff, and we were able to form a subcommittee, which was the second subcommittee that sat under the roundtable. And this subcommittee is called the Environmental Strategies Working Group. I'm not going to talk about the Environmental Strategies Working Group because one of the youth will actually say a little bit more because they're really more involved in that. So I'll pass it on to Nicholas, and he can talk a little bit about that.
Hello. I serve as the youth chair of the Environmental Strategies Working Group. So like Sachinda said, the group is made up of about 15 youth and adults that around the city of Lowell. The youth and Sachinda meet 2 times a week on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 3 to 5. And the Environmental Strategies Working Group itself with the adults meet every first Tuesday of every month. And we're called the Environmental Strategies Working Group because we use environmental strategies to reduce the substance abuse in the city of Lowell. Some of these include the environmental scan project, which is part of the video, and another thing that we'll talk about later with pictures and advertisements around Lowell. Another thing we do is compliance checks, where we go and out to another community with an officer to make it safe. We go out to like different liquor stores and just convenience stores, and we try to buy either alcohol or tobacco products to make sure that they are following the law and not selling to minors. So I'll pass it off to Jimmy, to Kristen.
Thanks, Nicholas. I appreciate that. I've been working very closely with the youth on this coalition and on the Environmental Strategies Working Group, and I found it to be a very great experience. The students are very articulate, the youth are very articulate, and so I'm glad that they're here to represent the Environmental Strategies Working Group. It's been a lot of fun working with them. All right, so my name is Kirsten Doherty. I work at the Northeast Center for Healthy Communities in Lawrence, but I represent here today the Aspects Consulting portion of the Community Health Center. So I'm going to be talking about the Communities That Care Youth Survey that was administered in the spring of 2010 to 6th to 12th graders. And we, as an organization, helped administer it, and then we also did the report, which you have in your packets. You have a full report, and then you also have a summary, report, an executive report, or executive summary report, which probably would be easier to read. So, because I'll be going through the data anyhow. So this survey is done every 2 years. This particular data set is really about the baseline data to see where we're starting from, and then to measure again in 2 years, which actually will be spring 2012, to see if any of the interventions and the strategies and the work that the coalition has been doing is actually having an impact on the substance use rates. And also, it also includes more than the substance abuse questions. I mean, it has questions around bullying and suicide and feeling safe in your neighborhood. So it just doesn't address that. It really looks at sort of the overall holistic youth. All right, so just in terms of the numbers, we surveyed about 3,000 youth from grades 6 to 12, so part of the middle school and the high school. I think that's a pretty good response. We did it it was done during MCAS, so we had a captive audience, I guess, in regard to that. All right, we had 2 schools that didn't take it, Stocklosa and Butler, so we hope to be able to work with them next time in order to do the survey there. And I also just sort of keep in mind in terms of seeing the data that this data doesn't include out-of-school youth. So there's that whole other component that are hard to access, honestly. But this is still, regardless, really important data. All right, so what you're looking at now is the past 30-day alcohol, tobacco, and other drug use among all grades in 2010. So past 30-day use would be the use, prior to the survey they took, so that 30 days prior. So the blue line at the top represents the alcohol. The red line is binge drinking. Now, binge drinking is where the youth consumes, 5 or more drinks in a row on one occasion. So they're at a party, they do 1, and then they do 2, so right in a row. So that's considered binge drinking. I think most of us are familiar with that. And cigarettes is the green line, marijuana is the purple, and inhalants are the blue. So obviously looking at through the grades from 6 to 12, alcohol is really the most commonly used substance drug. And again, I don't think we're entirely surprised by that. And in terms of past 30-day use, it's used at least once in the last 30 days. So that's what that represents. So more regular use. And then binge drinking is the next in terms of the higher. And then marijuana is also sort of next to alcohol, the highest used substance among these grades. That's it. And the cigarettes and the inhalants are lower, I think, with all the tobacco prevention efforts that have been going on over the last decade or so, have really made a difference in terms of keeping those numbers lower. And then inhalant use tends to, a lot of the experimentation is happening in middle school, and then it tends to trend down, and that's pretty common nationally. But I think it is important to notice, though, if you look at the numbers, it's scary because you're looking at the 12th grade, even at the 10th grade. I mean, we're talking more than a third of the students that have used in the last 30 days. So that's a real big number. All right, so this is prescription drug use by grade. It's showing 30-day use, so use in the past 30 days before the survey. That's the blue line. The red line represents lifetime, so they've at least tried it once or, tried taking a pill once. And this is non-medical use. So these are prescription drugs that weren't prescribed by a doctor, and that's specifically stated in the survey, so there's no confusion. Just so you get a sense of the types of drugs or prescription drugs that they were given in terms of examples, were pain relievers, tranquilizers, and stimulants. So we're talking Vicodin, OxyContin, tranquilizers, we're talking about Xanax, Ambien, and stimulants, Ritalin or Adderall, which again, we're familiar with. It's a real issue. It's becoming a real issue nationally. The grant that we're working on focuses on alcohol, marijuana, cigarettes, and prescription drugs, so it's definitely a focus of the grant. Right now, there's no national data comparison, and we're going to talk about the national data, but there are going to be more questions about it in the survey to try to better understand the problem. Okay, so average age of onset basically is referring to first use. So when they first took their, a puff of marijuana, or their, a couple of puffs of a cigarette, or, drank a beer. So, when they were experimenting, most likely. And so what I'm finding in terms of cigarettes and marijuana, what we found is that they're trying it earlier than the national norm. So that's not a good statistic. What else I want to say, too, about the alcohol, cigarettes, and marijuana, and why it's important to look at that, because they're really a gateway drug, and maybe you've heard that term before. But if they're using earlier, the tendency or propensity for them to become users of prescription drugs and heroin and harder drugs is much greater. And also addiction-wise, too. There's a greater propensity that they will become addicted. All right, so now we're looking at perception of great risk of harm by school. So the blue's the high school and the red's the middle school. And we're looking at drinking alcohol regularly, cigarette smoking regularly, and smoking marijuana. So we're basically asking them whether they feel drinking alcohol, smoking cigarettes, smoking marijuana is harmful to them. So actually the smaller number is more worrisome because they don't perceive it as being of great risk. And so cigarettes, again, not surprising, 71% in high school, and then the red in middle school, this youth are perceiving as, more harmful to their health, more harmful in general. Again, I don't think that's really a surprise. And then in terms of perception of harm with marijuana and alcohol, it's pretty much the same. The 6th to 8th graders view marijuana as more harmful, which is the middle school, compared to high school. So that's interesting, maybe as they get older. We don't know. I mean, we have to do more data collection because this is just from the surveys. We're going to continue to do data collection focus groups to really get to the bottom of, why that is the case. And sort of the national trends in terms of the national survey I'm going to refer to, is that there's a trend toward youth feeling there's even less of a risk in smoking marijuana. So that's the perception. Marijuana isn't harmful. This is past 30-day alcohol, tobacco, and other drug use among 8th graders. So the next 3 slides are 8th, 10th, and 12th grade because the National Monitoring the Future survey, which is what this data is compared to, looks at 8th, 10th, and 12th grade. And I think it's important, too, if you think about developmentally, 8th grade, they're entering high school. 10th grade, they're sort of not the freshmen anymore, but, now they're cool. They're the 10th graders and the 12th graders, obviously, in terms of them going on, the seniority and all that. So this is concerning for the 8th grade in particular, that the past 30-day use, so they have used in the past 30 days prior to the survey, alcohol is 18% compared to the national, which is 15% in binge drinking. Now, it's not extremely higher, significantly, but at the same time, it's higher, and percentages are deceiving because they represent a greater number of youth when you look at a greater population of people. And then the rest of it isn't as notable. But let's see. And also, it's not represented here, but there are higher levels of lifetime alcohol and cigarette use than the national norm. So this is past 30-day use among 10th graders of alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs. Now, what I want to point out about this slide is that the jump from 8th grade, so you saw before that, you saw before that it was 18% for 8th grade in terms of use of alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs in the last 30 days. Well, alcohol in the last 30 days. And then it jumps to 32%. So we're talking 2 grades, so that's pretty significant. And And then next to the seniors, the 10th graders have the second highest past 30-day use of alcohol and binge drinking in high school. And then 10th graders also have the highest past 30-day rate of marijuana among all grades in high school. So that's that. All right. And then 12th graders, it's high. I mean, I think, that's the bad news. The good news is that across the board, they're lower than the national norm in terms of past day 30-day use of alcohol, binge drinking, cigarettes, marijuana, inhalants. So that's the good news. The bad news is it's still bad. So, and we don't know why that's the case. I mean, I think we need to do a little bit more digging to figure out, why is it that it's lower? What is the community doing right? What is the school doing right, perhaps, that's a lower number? All right, so now what I'm going to talk about is we not only sort of looked at, asking them about their substance use rates, but, and their use, but we also wanted to get a sense, or the way the survey's set up, is to get a sense of, asking them questions around, do they feel safe in their neighborhood, which gets to this risk factor. We asked them, do you feel like you have an adult you can go to talk to? Does your family ask you about your report card? Types of questions like that. And the reason why we asked those questions was because we wanted to get at the context in which the youth are moving through. So I talked to Councilor Descoteau earlier that, the youth are going through 4 different domains. They have their family life, they have their school life, they have their greater community life, and then they have their peer life. And so it's really important to look at that context in terms of what may be increasing their propensity to use substances, so the risk factors, and then protective factors are the ones that are guarding against. So maybe they have an adult in their life that they feel like they can go to. They have that kind of social support. Maybe they're involved in the teen coalition and they get a lot of peer support and a lot of adult support around, tutoring or getting engaged in different community activities. So that's a protective factor. They're less likely to get involved with substances and use substances if there is that protective factor. So that's what I'm going to talk about now. And when I look at these in terms of comparison, these are higher than the national norm. And so that's why, as far as the risk factors, we're looking at those because, again, they were of more concern. The other thing there's a couple other things I wanted to point out too, is that and there's been studies that their exposure, adolescents, youth exposure to a greater number of risk factors is associated with more drug use and delinquency. So that's that relationship. And then the characteristics, both positive and negative, about these domains, whether it's community, school, family, or peer, have more to do with use abuse than income, ethnicity, or family structure. So that's really interesting to think about. So whether you're rich or poor, whether you come from this neighborhood or that neighborhood, whether your family's single, parent, or whatever, it's really those other pieces of feeling safe in their neighborhood. It's the other pieces of where, they live and how safe they feel and if they have an adult in their life or they don't. All right, so community disorganization really refers, these terms are interesting, but basically it's a negative perception of the community. So they don't feel safe in their neighborhood. They see a lot of graffiti. They might see abandoned buildings. They're not taking a sense of pride in their community. So questions they were asked is, if I had to move, I would miss the neighborhood I now live in. Do I like my neighborhood? Do I feel safe in my neighborhood? So questions like that in order to get at this risk factor. So this was 6th to 12th grade. So this was across all grades that this risk factor was high. Lack of community involvement. They were asked the question, which of the following activities for people your age are available in your community? To give a sense of whether or not they felt connected to the community, that they were engaged in organizations like in the coalitions and groups like the Teen Coalition. But for middle schoolers, when they are engaged, though, they do feel recognized for their accomplishments. So both being involved, but also acknowledging what they're doing, awards or going on field trips or whatever it might be. That's 6th through 8th grade. So that's middle school. Family conflict. they're in an environment where there's a lot of arguing, they feel very stressed out, maybe they don't feel safe. The questions were, people in my family often insult or yell at each other. We argue about the same things over and over. So that's what they were saying, and that was across the board, 6th to 12th grade. You know, and there's other things too, like, you know, moving from home to home, that grade transition from 8th to 9th grade, you know, the language barriers, the cultural norms, so all this other stuff within a family also contribute to increased use of substances. So low family recognition, again, that's across the board, 6th to 12th grade. So you come home, you know, your 8th grader comes home with a report card, and you just, you know, you're not acknowledging them. So if they got an A on a report or an A for their report card, they're not feeling, you know, recognized for it, and that's really sad. And so that's what they were saying, that they didn't get a lot of recognition from their family. Like, how often do your parents tell you they're proud of you for something you've done? Another risk factor is low perceived risk of drug use. So how much do you think people risk harming themselves if they try drug A? So those are the questions. Tried marijuana, tried whatever other substance. Again, a high percent of people of youth feel that drug use is not harmful. And again, it's either they're not, aware, they didn't have enough education on it. It's the, sort of the norms piece in terms of what they're hearing in their families and in the community. So they're not comprehending that there is potential harm. So lack of connection to religion and faith, that was across the board in terms of the grade, and that was just basically a question around whether they were involved in any church or religion or faith. And then low family involvement, 9th to 12th grade, so this was high school. Not a lot of family involvement, both in being engaged or recognized. One of the questions is, my parents ask me what I think before most family decisions affect me are made. So they didn't respond in the positive on that. All right. So that was the risk factors. The other things we asked about were risky behaviors. So, what are the things they're doing? What are their unsafe behaviors? What other unhealthy things they're doing besides using alcohol, tobacco, other drugs? So this is middle school. And it's not, I'm sorry that it's not as even, but the getting suspended, which is, I don't know what color, salmon, is the highest at 17%. And then the blue is attacking someone with intent to harm, and that's at 15%. So those are the two risky behaviors that rose to the top for middle school, 6th to 8th grade. Oh. And then these are risky behaviors that were for the high school. And again, getting suspended and attacking someone with intent to harm rose to the top. But the other thing that is notable is that the 11% reported being drunk or high at school. Okay, so now these are the protective factors. So these are the things that guard against use of substances. And these are things in the community, in the family, in the schools that you want to build on. Because the attitude shouldn't be, oh, everything's wrong with the school, everything's wrong with the community, it's more like, what are we doing right already? What are the youth saying that we're doing right already that we can now build upon? And that's the way it should be really looked at, not in a problem negative-oriented way, but in an asset, strength-based kind of way. So in terms of the protective factors, so these ranked higher than the norm compared to the national data set. So this is this is community and school recognition. So the students were asked, along the lines of, there are people in my neighborhood who are proud of me when I do something well. So that's what we were hearing. The school lets my parents know when I have done something well. My teacher notices when I'm doing a good job and lets me know about it. So those are the types of responses. And then this is low early initiation of drug use. This is across the board, 6th to 12th grade. And basically it's saying that the 6th to 12th graders are not using drugs as early as youth are nationally. High family involvement. So youth are involved in the family life. You know, they're sitting down at dinner and the parents are asking them, how was your day? You know, name one good thing that happened to you today. Name one thing that wasn't so great that happened to you today. So that's really where they feel like they're being heard, at least in the middle school, that they're engaged, that they're part of the family dynamic. High community involvement in the high school. Again, it's, you know, if you're engaged in any sort of community activity, group, club, that they were feeling that there's a lot of opportunities to get involved in the community. In the high school, extracurricular opportunities. So it was something, the question was around, you know, being engaged in opportunities that were sports related, you know, recreational related. They felt like there were a lot of opportunities in the high school to do that. And then low peer acceptance of drug use in high school. Questions like how wrong do you think it is for someone your age to drink beer, wine, or hard liquor? So there's less acceptance and favorable attitudes toward using drugs. That's what they're hearing from their peers, at least in the high school. So that's that. So the middle school, and I think we all know that it's really important. We all sort of, I mean, I've talked about it, you know, have to start early educating your youth, your children, the youth in the community about the dangers. You know, what happens to your brain, you know, what happens to your ability to do something, what happens to the possibilities of you going on in higher education. So I think at the middle school level, it's really critical, even before that almost, to start the education, start the conversations between the parents and the youth and the school and the youth. Because at the middle school, the risk factors are higher and the protective factors are lower. So that's really an area of concern. So just in terms of the next steps, you know, the data collection has been done. We've identified the areas to look at, the risk and protective factors that the coalition wanted to focus in on. There's been a strategic plan that's been created, and you have those strategic priorities in your packet of information. And then also right now we're sort of looking at the communication piece, like how are we going to tell the general public about this? How are we going to, what's the messages, or what are the messages going to be that we want to communicate to the community? Because it's a community issue. It's not just a school or a family issue. It's not just the city manager's problem. It's not just the city council's problem. It's not just, you know, headmaster's problem. It's everybody's problem. But we really want to make sure, and again, not just me, but really the coalition, the community, want to make sure that it's said in a very positive way. What's really happening that's great already in the community, and what can we work on to make it better? And these are the areas that we're suggesting you focus on based upon the data that we received. So I think that's it.
At this time, I'll introduce Jimmy King, who will he'll talk a little bit about what the video or the project that we had worked on is about, and then I'll play that for you.
So I will be talking about the Tag It project, which is broken down into two parts. For the project, we utilized two concepts by the Above the Influence campaign. These two concepts are the I am and I wish concepts. The first portion of the video will feature the I wish section, in which we asked peers and youth around Lowell on what they wanted to change in the community of Lowell. The second part will feature the I am section, where we asked the youth of Lowell what they did that had a positive impact on Lowell, and I hope you enjoyed the video.
I wish bullying would stop in school. I wish there weren't cigarette butts all around school.
I wish violence would stop.
I wish there was no more shootings.
I wish for the lights to stay on.
I wish you weren't afraid. I wish no more killing animals. I wish for people to understand my true self.
I wish there was no drunk driving.
I wish for more support. I wish everyone understood me.
I wish Berlin would stop.
I wish for fresh air.
I wish people wouldn't smoke here.
I wish for less advertisement.
I wish more words were spoken.
I wish people wouldn't throw trash in the water. I wish people would not litter. I wish street art was transferred onto canvas. I wish for more available basketball courts.
I wish everyone found an interest in programs like ORSAP, WARO, ROI, ADAM, and Afrofuture.
I wish gas prices were low. I wish for less potholes. I wish the streets were safe at night.
I wish there were no more drugs. I am going to school every day.
I am making a difference.
I am encouraging positive speech. I am helping the homeless. I am tobacco free.
I am taking back my community through heartbeat syllables.
I am a 10 member town hall leader.
I am a part of LTC coalition.
I am staying active. I am spicing up the world with positivity. I am helping others.
I am helping the homeless.
I am a member of Adam Project.
I'm loving you with my work.
I am a cheerleader for Journey Together.
I am volunteering.
I am AFJROTC.
I am taking back my community with my own words. I am taking back my community by teaching after-school dance programs. I am cleaning my streets. I am educating preteens.
I am Student of the Month.
I am voicing my concern. I am speaking truth.
I am the LTC coalition children.
We are the YWCA.
I am taking back my community that forced the in a peaceful way.
I am part of LCHC Teen Coalition.
I am above the influence.
I'm captain of the gymnastics team. I am a musician. I am frustrated.
I am a part of the Lowell Roundtable.
We are taking back our community.
So we actually showed this at our second annual town hall meeting. We usually have a town hall meeting every year, usually around Alcohol Awareness Month. It's a way that we bring the community together, and this year we actually displayed some of the results to our audience. So like I said earlier, that was part of our environmental scan project that we did this past summer, and we will continue doing different environmental scans. But another portion of the environmental scan, we went around different convenience stores and liquor stores and took pictures of different advertisements, and took different pictures with like inside the coolers to show like how the placement of different products could affect like children that are like maybe 6 or 7 years old. I'll pass it over to Selena to talk about some of the pictures that we have here.
With that being, I have a few photos in my hands of the photos that were taken in the local convenience stores and alcohol establishments. One of them is, do you want to pass it over? Okay. One of them is the alcohol stacked up in the entrance of a store, which I believe it shouldn't be there. It should be stacked up in the back of the store. The second one is the bug juice, the children's juice, advertised in a freezer where all the liquors, all the alcohol is. The third one is the soda being located near the alcohol in the freezer, which it is separated, but it shouldn't be there. And this one is the Arizona drinks, looking exactly like the Four Locals bottle, which could be like mistaken from the Four Locals. The final one is drinks like juices and coffee in a freezer that's surrounded by the Coors Light advertisement.
And again, these are just some of the pictures that they have taken that when they looked at it showed something, and they had a lot to talk about. And those are just some of the issues, because it's starting to make it seem like alcohol is a social thing. And to young people going into these stores, just getting juices or Pepsi or chips, they're seeing it all over the place, and it can affect them in some way. And part of environmental scan is not just about looking at the convenience stores or looking at the alcohol establishments, but we're actually looking the environment and where they are in, the different sectors of our community. Is there broken lights, or is the streets clean, and where those or is there in a dark alley where these things are? So throughout the summer, their environmental scan is not just based on these advertisements. That's just one focus that they did in the beginning to get them started. But we just want to share that with all of you as well. So.
Like how many establishments and like where you were in
So when these guys did the environmental scans, they did it within the whole community. It was we split up into teams of 5, 3 cars. We went into 3 different sectors and kind of did our thing. The managers or the people who were working allowed us to take these pictures. We have plenty of more. We just want to show a couple just to address some of the issues that we see. Along those lines, I mean, compliance checks are done, you know, quarter months with the police department. They've been working very well with us. Those are working. A lot of people are starting to respond in a more positive way where they complying with the law because they really don't want to get in trouble. But we need to keep addressing the issues, or we need to keep doing it in order for people to stay 100% compliance with the law. So, and I guess this time for any questions or comments and concerns from amongst the council members and the committee members.
Well, again, I'd like to thank you for coming. The information, the data was expected, I think, and sad, but the final presentation is uplifting. I'm glad to see that we're working on it. It means we can move in the right direction and that there are young people who are participating. And so thank you. Keep up the hard work on that. I appreciate what you're doing for your community. Mr. Murphy, Mr. Elliott, do you have any questions, comments?
Thank you. We have the manager here, so we might as well ask him some questions. And that's getting to, it was mentioned earlier about the tobacco prevention efforts, and we have had several neighborhood meetings where people from the health department have come in and told us what's going on there. But one of the areas of concern that was raised was beyond just placement of alcohol. It was drug paraphernalia, and so I guess the question is, what efforts are going on right now, and what might be necessary to make those efforts more effective?
Well, like so many issues, we depend heavily upon people like the work that the members of the coalition have done in sort of identifying these issues and bringing them to our attention. We did have a case that comes to mind just recently where there was a variety store selling drug paraphernalia, and it was reported to the police department. It was reported to my office initially. We referred it off to the police department, and immediate action was taken to remove those because much of that material, those is illegal to be being sold. Other areas are a little bit more gray, and I think the tobacco prevention people have given some presentations on this out in the neighborhoods, that sort of what is being used by youth, but also older people with regards to drug use, that they can just buy at their local variety store. And so again, bringing awareness to some of that is important. But in terms of the actual drug paraphernalia, that if we get reports of that, we send the police out immediately, and they take the corrective action.
Yeah, I understand there's obviously some items that are illegal. I guess the problem comes where the items aren't necessarily illegal and are innocent enough if they're by themselves, but that they're being in some cases actively promoted to as ping pong balls. Nobody has a great desire to play ping pong at 2 o'clock in the morning. Right. But that they're being actively promoted to teenagers in a way that it clearly has resulted in.
Right. That gets into one of those gray areas I was talking about. That whether it is in fact illegal, that we can actually require that they be removed, and that we'd have to do more work on. But again, the work that the tobacco control people are doing, they don't leave just their focus on the use of tobacco, but for instance, there are tobacco-related products that are very useful to in smoking marijuana that many people just aren't aware of, And so going out, meeting with the neighborhood groups, meeting with parent organizations, and alerting them to the risks that are out there, because in many cases these are entry drugs that then lead to more serious drug use down the road. So a good portion of it, while we may not be able to take action in terms of enforcement to prevent them from doing that, we certainly can try to work with the businesses in an encouraging way to do things differently. But I think most importantly, we can work to educate the adults of the community of the use of some of these items.
Thank you.
Councilor Elliott?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Kristen, can I ask you a couple of questions on the data, particularly the surveys? You did indicate this was done through the schools. Do you have any idea what the total number? I'm not questioning the data. I'm just trying to get an understanding why a couple of the middle schools, the Butler School and the Stucklosa, didn't participate, or did they just not get them back in time, or?
I'm going to have Shitenda actually answer that because he knows better.
Okay.
The time frame in which we've administered the surveys were at almost the end of the summertime. It was towards spring? Yeah, spring, and it was going towards vacation, and then MCAS happened. And then along those lines, it was really hard at that point. I didn't know exactly why they didn't, at that time, participated, but all the other schools had known about it and did it in a fairly amount of time. So I gave them a time frame, and it didn't happen. So what we did was just we moved forward after a long period of wait. But hopefully at this time, we made presentations to the vice principals and principals at all the public schools prior to doing the surveys again next year. So they already know firsthand that it is coming about, and they're going to make every effort to make sure that they complete their part and their roles in the completion of the surveys.
So you're going to attempt to do this again next year, or?
It's every 2 years, yes.
It's every 2 years, so it won't be next year, it'll be the following year.
Right, correct.
I mean, I guess I was just concerned that you didn't get the data because the results seem to be fairly honest, or we get almost 3,000 surveys back, and almost, at least maybe close to a third from, actually close, 1,700 from, what are they, 3,600 students at the high school. That's, I guess that's half anyway, which is at least a good number.
Mm-hmm.
To get it back probably in the time frame that we're looking at. And the reason for my line of questioning are, how could we project out the results that you did bring forward? Because to me, they're a little bit alarming, as you indicated, particularly with alcohol use and the frequency, which was going to lead me to my next question. You did some surveys or you did some spot checks. I mean, do we know how these kids are getting access to this alcohol?
We don't know how they're getting access. I mean, we're able to know if we do smaller types of surveys, more like, it's like there's no way because it's anonymous, and the questions aren't really asking where they're getting it. Are they getting it at home or things like that? It's very broad, and they ask a series of questions to get a final answer. And some of those, I mean, we had probably more than 3,000 surveys sent back to us. It's just the fact that we do a series of breakdowns as well to actually see if they actually went through it, because a lot of them, they draw on it. They make these things, so we know that they didn't take it seriously. So it's that factor, and it's really hard to kind of figure out, where all these things are coming from. Who knows? We don't know if they're all telling the truth. We only get the portion that we do know is when we break down the surveys. And again, the numbers that you see about the 3,000 surveys that were completed, that's not including the charter school as well. So those are some of the things that we're working on, and we're also trying to work with the private schools as well to see, the different factors that come into play. So,
no, I want to commend you for undertaking this study, because these are understanding that there are some variables. There, some of the surveys, that the margin of error, regardless of what it is, there is still some underlying trends in the schools, and particularly with 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, where we clearly need to do a better job in educating or exposing the kids to these factors. While the information is, it's a little disconcerting, it does show that there is a problem, and it definitely starts at the 6th grade and progressively moves, depending upon what substance or whatever issue they're dealing with, but there's a gradual increase, and that's problematic. And I think it's important that we bring this forward. And secondly, how do we get the message out to the community? As you know, that was one of your initiatives that you're looking to do. I think this is the perfect forum to do that. Councilor Dakota will bring this report forward tonight, and I hope it gets into the newspaper, that look, there's an issue, parents. We need to do something about it. We need to keep a closer watch on what's taking place and access and what are your kids doing, and as well as factors to either prevent it or try to address it. Family conflict, school issues, simple things that sometimes we all need to be reminded as parents. So thank you for the information and the explanation, knowing that this is going to continue forward. I was surprised that you got that many surveys back from the high schools. People are afraid. Sometimes they're not honest, but at least there is some baseline data to measure against and to try to take some action, for.
If I may just make, if that's okay, just in terms of what you were just talking about, and just in terms of the validity of the surveys and the credibility of the surveys too, there's a cleaning process. So, and I know that you're questioning it, but just so you know, there is a cleaning process. So manually, the surveys are gone through manually, and if it's obvious that the student wasn't taking the survey seriously, for instance, they actually will, in some cases, the youth were, they'd answer all B and all C, and you sort of just knew that the youth weren't taking it seriously because they were, answering the same response or the same letter every time, or they used it as an opportunity to do their initial, of their first name. So we knew in that case that they weren't, taking it seriously enough for us to even count that survey. So we did pull that stuff out. So, and the other thing that I want to say is that there does need to be more data collection around access. There needs to be more data collection around social norms, because in some cultures and some families, there is a norm around marijuana that it's okay. There is a norm around having a drink on a holiday that's okay. There are norms in the community, in certain places where, alcohol drinking, it's very visible, like our festivals and stuff, where so the youth aren't dumb. They get that. But just in terms of the communities, because we work with a lot of different communities in the Northeast, a lot of the data is coming back, like done through focus groups or surveys, attitudes and behaviors, that youth are getting them from social sources. So you have your retailers, you have your bars, and you have your liquor stores, and that's definitely happening. But youth are also getting them from older siblings, other adults, and they're even getting it from their own homes, whether with their parents' knowledge or without their parents' knowledge. So that's harder to address. It's easier to address if, a liquor store is selling to a minor. Well, we can address that through policy. It's much more challenging to address that when it's a social source, because with the social sources, say, it's, a college student, or you're talking 21 plus. I mean, how can we get to these people? How can we educate them that this is a bad thing? We don't know where they are. They could be unemployed, they could be in college, they could be wherever they might be. So, we have to look at all the data to make sure that there are developing strategies and looking at interventions that will address the social access piece. And, there's compliance checks, there's all the policy pieces, but there is that social access piece. And did you want to say something, Nick? I'm talking too much. We need to hear from you.
Us three actually took the survey. it was pretty long. I at first didn't want to do it because it was like 200 questions. And like I understand the difficulty of it because it was very in-depth, but like they had to find that limitation of they'll lose focus or lose interest in it. But like me being part of this subcommittee, I understood the importance of it. So I think the more we get the data out, the more results we'll get back from the different schools.
You know, that's, Madam Chair, that's a good point. I did want to ask, you know, the length of the survey, was it too much? Doesn't, again, not questioning it, but understanding why so many were not returned. I just had one more question on the graph on risky behaviors. In middle school, 5% of the kids are at school say they were drunk, and then that percentage increases to 11% in high school. Is that a social, that's kind of a staggering number to me when I look at the number of respondents and potential. I'm not saying that number could double, but it clearly, if you factor the numbers out, that's going to be a higher percentage.
Yeah, and we need to figure that out too. I mean, where are they going in the morning that they're drinking a beer, or maybe they have what are those small bottles?
Something.
I forget what they're called, but you know, if where are they going in the community, in the neighborhood where they might be smoking? Maybe they get together with their friends in the morning and sit, you know, I don't know where. So we need to actually have focus groups and talk to the youth and figure out why that's, you know, why that's the case. We did present to the principals and vice principals and the social workers, and so I think they found it a little bit surprising too. So, you know, it's interesting. I think we have to do more data collection.
So what is your next step from here? Have you met with, was this the first stop to this subcommittee and the manager, and then the superintendent of the school committee? I mean,
they were the first stop, yes. The superintendent and the school committee were the ones who gave us permission first to do the surveys. We already addressed the data to them. We spoke with the Board of Health. They already received the information. And like Kristen said, the vice principal, principals, and social workers received it as well. Our next step is to go into the neighborhood groups and do the same presentation because they have access to the parents who are involved in the community. And from there, we're just trying to make sure that everybody within the community who are working to make this community a positive place to live in gets this data. The young people are working in their ways to work to get this data out to the young people that they know, because we have a very good relationship with the high school. It might be shown during one of their classroom hours about the data and the results and what they were. So those are some of our plans for the near future. So.
At UTEC, have you made a stop, or will you be making a stop with
We'll
UTEC?
be making stops for all the youth agencies in the community. Respectively, they are a part of a bigger coalition, which is a violence prevention coalition. All five of the youth agencies sits on that, and that will be addressed at that one time. And of course, the youth city council members as well.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. I'd like to just recognize Councillor Mercier, who's joined us, and Councillor Caulfield. Thank you very much for coming. I would just like to mention that if you had almost 3,000 students completely fill out a 200-question survey, to me that means that they want this, they want to have this dialogue, so that's a wonderful thing. I also noticed, and I think that this is a positive thing, that so many of the protective factors, particularly in the 6th to 8th grade, are things we can do, you know, with the information. And I think that's one of the things we should take home from this, is that we have some power to make these problems reduced. I do have a question in terms of the next steps. I know you talked about, so you have data collection, you have some evaluation, you're going to go out and disseminate the data to us in the neighborhood groups. Will there be programming created from this that you know of or through your organization? And if so, do you have ways to tie results? Because I know you said this is benchmark, and then you're halfway through the 2-year cycle, so you'll be doing it another round in a year. Is there any way to tie success so we know what's working?
Technically, the Drug-Free Community Grant, limits us from creating programs. We're more of primary prevention, trying to prevent things from happening from the ground, from the starting and addressing risk and protective factors. So we really can't create programs. But there are programs out there that are already doing some of this type of work. Working with those programs and hopefully giving them maybe a way and training young people to teach younger people. Like for instance, the League of Youth is a group of young peer leaders from the Teen Coalition who goes out into the community to talk to preteens about violence prevention, teen pregnancy prevention, substance abuse prevention, and HIV and AIDS awareness. So that can be a part of something that they do. But there's not technically a program that we can develop and offer to the city because of the limitations of the grant.
And it seems like it'll be difficult then to tell when the numbers change what the changes are from. And I guess that's a statement. I wish we could come up with a way to fix that.
Yeah, there's always different variables, but you know, the whole goal is really to, you know, we want happy and healthy and productive youth. So if hopefully our efforts are, you know, I say our efforts. I'm also a city resident, so I keep, even though I'm representing my organization doing technical assistance and evaluation, but you know, if the rates are reduced, then good.
Yep, that's great. I also want to mention that the mayor has joined us. Thank you, Mr. Mayor Milanazzo. Thank you for coming. Are there any questions or comments, thoughts by anyone else? Any other things you'd like to add?
Oh, and I had one thing that I want to mention quickly, that Councilor Mercier came to our town hall meeting, and she had motioned, I guess, the next meeting to keep the lights on longer, and we want to thank her for doing that as well, and thank you guys for listening to
the manager. We
yeah?
refer our motions to the manager. That's what I was going to say.
Oh.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
It's because of you that did that. We don't know what's going on all the time. We rely on the youth to tell us what they want, just as we rely on the neighborhood groups to say what's going on in your neighborhood. So I commend all of you, because I know life is so busy, your time is precious, and yet you're taking time to look out for the youth of our city. So I commend you for everything that you do. It was a wonderful presentation. You ought to be very proud, and if the youth of the city are our future, we're in pretty darn good shape. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. I would just like to say I like your haircut. So if there's nothing else, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Well, yeah, I will make a motion to accept this report as a report of progress, and we will bring it to the full city council meeting, have a discussion on it, and
Second.
Second. So moved. Thank you again.
Thank you very much.
motion to adjourn. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.